You ready?
Yep.
Okay, you're on.
Hello, Janet. This is Josh and Jody coming to you for your first hive update. The last time we were here, we checked this hive over, and they were not doing so hot. The queen, it was mostly the queen. She just wasn't laying a really good pattern. And I had bought 10 queens. I was going to hopefully make 10 more hives up, but we ended up replacing a lot of queens, and Queen Hannah was one of the ones that got replaced, the original one. So what we're doing today is we're going to go through and try to find Queen Hannah, the one we replaced, and see how good she's doing. So what this is, the bees, you can see that there's actually was quite a few bees in this hive, which was surprising since the queen was doing so terrible. But this is all nectar. So this is new comb that they're bringing in and putting on this frame. This is a wood frame with plastic, and then the bees, the plastic has the imprint of the foundation, or the queen's the cells, sorry. And then they'll build that out with wax, and now they're backfilling it with nectar, which they'll turn into honey. This frame here this is what the honey looks like once they finish it off. So this has a cap on it. They'll fill that up with nectar. They dry the nectar down till it gets to the right percentage of moisture, and then they'll put a cap so moisture can't get back into it. And it doesn't look like there's too much going on in the top box here, other than they're just bringing honey and nectar in.
Which is good, because that's what they're supposed to do.
Right. So the packages we got this year, we bought 20. Last year we bought 40 packages, and the packages did pretty good throughout most of the year, but then we had a catastrophic loss in the wintertime. And one of the things I should have done last year was replace the queens. When you buy packages from the south, a lot of times the queens aren't the best queens, but they didn't look terrible, so we ended up keeping them. So one of the changes we made this year was that I was going to get less packages and get better queens and make more queens up, or make more hives up with better queens, and end up replacing all of them. Which is what I started to do last time we were up here, and then we ended up just replacing the original queens right away. I was going to replace them later on in the year, but so this is a frame of brood, and I think this is probably from the original queen. You can see this is, it looks like it's an older capping, so I think this was from the last Queen Hannah.
So the queen basically walks back and forth on these frames, and she'll lay an egg, and in 3 days the egg will turn into a larva. Then nurse bees will come through and feed it. All the bees get a little bit of royal jelly, some honey, and some pollen. And after, is it about 16 days that it spins a cocoon?
Right, yeah.
It'll spin a cocoon, which is the cappings that you see here. That's the cap of the cocoon. And then about a week after that, the worker bee will chew through that and emerge.
So this is a kind of a typical frame. What you get is, a lot of times the bees will put honey around the edge, and then some pollen in there too, and then they'll put bees in the middle. The only thing is that this has a lot more honey and pollen in it and less bees than we would like to see. So I think this is bees from the old queen. Actually, here's some eggs. So there's eggs in the bottom. So these could be hers. There's eggs right down here.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can see down in the bottom of there, standing on end, is a little tiny white speck. It's sort of like a grain of rice there. It's only much, much smaller, but similar in appearance. Here's some larvae.
So it would appear that one of the big concerns that you always have with replacing a queen is that they don't accept the queen and they end up killing her, which these queens that we replaced were $40 each, which seems kind of pricey for a single bug, but if they're good, they're worth it. But considering that there's eggs in here, they must have accepted her, because even if they went to make their own queen, she couldn't have eggs in here by now after 2 weeks.
And bees, a lot of times they favor their own genetics, so when you put a new queen in that isn't from their genetics, there's a higher risk that they might not like her, and they actually sting them to death. When we put Queen Hannah and Queen Hannah 2 and we left her in a screen cage for about 2 days so that the bees could get used to the way that she smelled.
We took out the old,
the original queen
you have
out.
to take the original queen out so that they know that they don't have a queen in there anymore. And then a lot of times you want to leave it queenless for a little bit, because then they get a little more nervous, and then put your new queen in that has the pheromones and all that ready to go, and you have a better success rate. But some of these really didn't like their new queen one way or the other. We went to release them and we could see that they're still stinging them, so we let them go for another day.
Basically, when a queen is in the hive, there are worker bees that kind of are always around her, and they're always licking her and grooming her, and they take that pheromone and spread it throughout the hive. And that's just kind of a reassurance to all the bees that the queen is doing her job and she's laying eggs and everything is going as planned. And when you take the queen out, that pheromone dies down and they can tell that something is wrong. One of the signs when the queen is failing, or if something happened to her and a hive doesn't have a queen, one of the signs is that they're really agitated. A lot of times they're really ornery.
These guys are a little ornery. Just that stung in the belly. And the fat. That really hurts. Yeah! Most of the time, the bee stings you get used to. That one, like a burning wire sticking into my flesh. They just are a little bit more angry than I like them to be.
That's often, it's a trade-off. A lot of times, more aggressive hives, and these guys aren't really very aggressive at all either. I'm here with this black microphone just a couple feet right in front of their hive, and they're not stinging me.
So then this is a frame full of pollen. The bees collect two different things from flowers. One would be the nectar, which they turn into honey. That's their carbohydrates. And then the other thing is pollen. That's what all this is pollen that they collect, and that is their fat and protein.
You can see there's different colors of pollen.
Yeah, there's some black, like black or gray stuff, and orange and yellow. That all just comes from different flowers. So this is their fat and protein. Without pollen, they can't really raise new bees, so that's crucial. One of the things we tell people, like, what can we do on our own yard? One of the best things for bees early in the spring, and homeowners a lot of times don't like to see them, but dandelions are one of the first things that start to bloom early in the spring that has both nectar and pollen for the bees to eat. So those early dandelions are very needed. This frame here was the reason that we replaced the original Queen Hannah. You can see these are what's called drone cells.
So those puffy things there, those are all drones or boy bees.
So when the hive wants to make drones, typically they'll put them on the outside edge here, and they build the cells out so that they're a little bit wider. And I don't know if you can look, but like these cells here are wider than what these are. And the queen will say, okay, that's a drone cell. She'll measure it and put an unfertilized egg into that drone cell, which will then turn into a male bee. When she's over here though measuring, these were supposed to be worker cells just based on the size, and she was laying drone eggs.
She laid unfertilized eggs in there, which is why they're sticking out so much.
Right.
Because they were supposed to be in a bigger cell.
Right. So she meant to fertilize it, but she probably ran out of sperm. She mates. The queen will go out on a mating flight right after she hatches, and will mate with up to around 26 male bees. And if she doesn't get well mated, she runs out of sperm really quickly, which is what happened here. And when she lays what's supposed to be a worker egg in a worker cell, and it ends up being unfertilized, Instead of growing out wide, they grow out tall. So that's always a sign to us that queen needs to be replaced. And here's a frame of what it should look closer to. It's kind of hard to say right now. The queens that were replaced, I had a couple that looked really good, and some of them looked, it's also spotty, which can be a concern. But one of the genes that the new queens have is called varroa sensitive hygiene, and they smell the varroa mites in the cell, and the bees will actually pick out the brood that has those mites in them, and that keeps the hive cleaner that way. So with the new queen, she's going to be doing that more. And part of it is that they had this, since this hive was doing so terrible to begin with, she didn't have a whole lot of frames of brood to kind of work with either, because the queen was laying drones, so it makes kind of a goofy pattern on the frame, and she'll kind of follow suit with that too. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to find the new Queen Hannah. We've been trying to mark the queens so that we can find them a little bit easier next time. We won't make a big deal out of it because it looks like she's got eggs and brood in here, so she's doing something. And if we find her, we will go back on video and show her to you if you want to.